and reissue. Have you come across this term before? Of course, I'm going to explain you what is forfeiture and reissue and everything. So forfeiture, have you come across or have you just read through? What is
Yes,
your idea of feature?
forfeiture is nothing but it's kind of cancellation, ma'am. Cancellation of
Correct,
shares.
correct. Yes. So uh, when we cancel it, because when there is a default by the shareholder. So the word forfeit, that's why I've taken this thing. So forfeit na to take back. So more like the cancellation. So cancellation or revoking, the right. அதுதான் வந்து forfeit. So it becomes the right of, it is the actually right of a company. When a particular shareholder fails to make a payment, both calls or allotment வந்து pay பண்ணல till the final day, due date or till the end of the accounting year, they are not paid அப்படின்னா, then the company has the right to forfeit those shares. Then it has to be, there is a requirement is board resolution has to be passed. And once the shares are forfeited, it becomes the property of the company. ஏன்னா அந்த வந்து the shareholder is no more a shareholder, and then those shares will come back to the company. Now it's my property, so I will again reissue it to someone else once again. But the reissue will happen, majority the reissue will happen at a price lower than the price of the shares. So this is the whole concept of forfeiture. And what is the effect of this particular entire concept? So cessation of membership. The shareholder ceases to be a member of the company. His name will be removed from the register of members. And then the money received so far, whatever is received from the shareholder, assuming he has paid application money alone, 2 rupees. Balance 8 rupees he has paid. That 2 rupees will not be refunded to him. And here that 2 rupees will sit in an account called shares forfeited account or forfeited shares account. This money is an unrealized profit. Why I am saying unrealized profit? It is something which could be your profit. Ana, it is not the real profit. With this amount, you have to meet your issue also. Reissue நீ பண்ணணும். So இதுல நீ டிஸ்கவுண்ட்ல பண்ற வெச்சுக்கோ, then you have to use this amount. So whatever is left over after the reissue of the shares, அதுதான் வந்து actual realized profit. So this particular account, which is the shares forfeited account or forfeited shares account, should be disclosed under the balance sheet and the liability side. Okay. Once the shares are reissued, whatever amount actual balance that you have in hand in this particular account, that becomes the realized profit. Here, we will see reissue also. So what is a reissue? Whatever, so assuming 150 shares have been forfeited. Now, on that 150 shares, we have a particular level where we have collected the money. Say 2 rupees is the application. So 300 you have collected. That is the amount which is there in the shares forfeited account. Now you are going to reissue this 150 shares to some other shareholder. So that will fetch you money. So that is the way that you adjust this loss, right? So it can be reissued for any amount. Okay, maybe higher or lower, any amount it can be reissued. In case of reissue at a discount, okay, the discount whatever discount that we are offering should not be more than the amount collected so far. அதாவது ஒரு shares forfeiture accountல தான் அந்த amount collected so far will be kept. The amount of discount should not exceed this particular balance. கையில இருக்கிறத தவிர நம்ம வந்து மிச்சமா கொடுக்க கூடாது. Okay. And purchaser should pay all ongoing installments. Whoever is purchasing this new shares, the forfeited shares, when we are reissuing, that particular person should continue the other installments. Say first call, final call. In the stage la vaangrango, adukapra vara ella installments, so that person has to bear it. Okay. So treatment. the treatment, and I will give you some key pointers which will help you understand the concept better. So any loss incurred by the company out of the reissue, it should be debited to the account called shares forfeited account. Why? Because the shares forfeited account which we create initially is the account which has the amount collected from the defaulter so far. So anga or amount irukku. Okay, I have some balance. Now, when I incur any loss in the reissue, that I have to offset using that amount in my balance. அதுக்கு தான் வந்து this amount, whatever is the loss, should be debited to that account. Okay? Since the shares forfeited account has a credit balance, it's a liability, correct? It has a credit balance. So any loss will be debited to that account. Apana, that so assuming credit balance, you have 2,000 rupees, and this loss is say 200 rupees. So then this will be debited to that account. So the net balance in that particular account becomes 1,800. Okay. So next, இதுல வந்து assuming you have the loss is more than the balance. So what happens? Whatever is the excess should be debited to a separate account called discount on issue of shares account. Okay. In my example, previous example, the balance in forfeiture account is 2,000, whereas the loss on account of reissue is 2,200. Then the 2,200 will be debited to shares forfeited account. So what is the excess? It cannot completely debit the entire 2,200. You know, it is more than your balance. So to the extent available, you can debit the account only for the extent of 2,000. Balance the 200 should be debited to a separate account called discount on issue of shares account. The balance available in shares forfeited account after meeting any loss, then it should be transferred to the capital reserve. So in my first example, the total shares forfeited account is 2,000 balance. Your loss on account of reissue is 200. So 2,000 minus 200, 1,800. This 1,800 will be debited to the, it will be transferred to capital reserve account. Correct? So this is the realized profit. Okay, whatever balance is there in the shares forfeited is unrealized profit. Only when you offset the actual loss which the company has incurred on account of reissue, only after offsetting that, whatever amount you have in hand, actual as the realized profit. Then, if the reissue is done on discount, okay, and if there is any surplus available for adjusting discount on issue, it should be transferred to the capital reserve account. Okay, இதெல்லாமே நம்ம வந்து problems போடும்போது நம்ம பார்க்கறச்சு உங்களுக்கு இன்னும் பெட்டரா புரியும். Then when only a part of the forfeited shares are reissued, இப்போ complete whatever is the forfeited shares, that entire forfeited shares has been reissued அப்படின்னா no confusion at all. இப்ப நம்ம சொன்ன எக்ஸாம்பிள் அப்படியே போட்டுக்கலாம். ஆனா out of the total forfeited shares, only a portion of the shares are reissued அப்படின்னா you have to find out the proportionate profit. Okay, pro rata profit. Proportionate profit you should reduce the discount. So the proportionate profit will be found out by using this formula. Profit on the total profit on forfeiture divided by total number of shares forfeited multiplied by the number of shares reissued. Okay, so that you should reduce the discount on the reissue from this amount. Whatever amount remains will be transferred to the capital reserve account. Okay, so இது எல்லாமே நம்ம ஃபார்முலாவாவோ இல்ல கான்செப்டாவோ பார்க்கும்போது it will be, everything will be in the air, but when we actually work out the problems, you will get a clarity. Okay, accounting entries. So accounting entries, I would say very simple. Major, we need to know only 2 entries. 2 plus 1, 3 entries. First one, the forfeiture ஆன உடனே what is the entry that we have to pass, and then at the time of reissue what is the entry, and after reissue what happened to the balance profit available. So you will transfer it to the capital reserve account. So these are the 3 stages of forfeiture. First stage, when the shareholder defaults. Okay, so the entry goes like this. I'll give you logical reasoning for why the account has been debited and why it is credited. Share capital account debit, securities premium account debit, to false in arrears account, to shares forfeited. நம்ம எப்பவுமே accounting entry வந்து the last thing that we should do is to mug up the entry. So we should never do that. When we do it, what happens? We forget which comes where which account should be debited, which account should be credited. சரி, அதுல கூட நம்ம வந்து ஸ்மார்ட்டா ஏதோ லாஜிக்கலா கனெக்ட் பண்ணி மக் அடிச்சிட்டோம் வச்சுக்கோங்க. What amount should appear there? That is the next big question. So it's always better to understand logically so that we never mug up. There is never a need to mug up an accounting entry. First, this shares capital account. Shares capital account, why we are debiting? Any guess?
It's investment.
Share capital account வந்து what is the nature of a share capital account? Whether it's a liability or an asset?
It's a liability.
It's a liability. So liability account always has a credit balance or debit balance?
Debit balance.
Liability.
It has a credit balance. Asset has a debit balance.
Liability எப்பவுமே credit balance. So அப்ப share capital எப்பவுமே credit balance இருக்கும். But இந்த இடத்துல why are we debiting share capital account? நீ ஃபர்ஸ்ட் ஆன்சர் பண்ணியே forfeiture-னா என்னன்னு. அதுலதான் ஆன்சர் இருக்கு.
Cancellation. To cancel the entry.
Yes, the company is taking back. Okay. First of all, why share capital is a liability? I have 10 investors. Those 10 investors has invested money in my account, in my company. எப்படி இன்வெஸ்ட் பண்ணிருக்காங்க? நான் அவங்களுக்கு ஷேர்ஸ் இஷ்யூ பண்ணிருக்கேன் for the money that they have invested in my company. When the company is liquidating, when I am winding up the company, what the company has to do? The company has to repay the money to the shareholders. Or whoever has given money to the company should be repaid. So at any given point of time, this share capital is a liability of a company because the company has to repay. That is why capital is a liability. Correct? This is the core concept. Now, during the tenure of the company, the shareholder, he failed, he defaulted. So what the company is doing? சரிப்பா நீ பைசா கொடுக்கல, உன் ஷேர் என்கிட்ட கொடுத்துரு. So he has failed to pay the money. So I have taken back his shares. Now, the number of shares which I have taken back from that particular investor should be reduced from my capital, because to that extent, 200 shares or 300 shares, I need not pay to him. I need not pay back the money, right? Because I have taken back the shares. He is no more my shareholder. That is why we are reducing the amount from the share capital. Adanalada share capital account is debited. So it is for cancellation of the shares, forfeiting the shares. சரி, securities premium account ஏன் வருது அப்படின்னா, if initially when you had issued the shares, if you had issued it through premium, what you would have done? You would have credited to share capital account, to securities premium account. So அதனால அந்த ரெண்டுத்தையுமே நீ வந்து to that extent you debit it. Okay. Then my next question is, what is the amount that this particular share capital should have? இந்த இடத்துல என்ன அமௌண்ட் நம்ம போடணும்? இதெல்லாம் ரொம்ப கிரிட்டிக்கல். ஏன்னா இது நமக்கு தெரிஞ்சிட்டுனா forfeiture-ல எங்கேயுமே நம்மளுக்கு வந்து we will not get any hiccups.
Ma'am, that installment amount, ma'am, that first call and final call account.
You're almost there, but I'll explain what I'm expecting.
Okay,
So,
ma'am.
if a share capital account, I'll put it this way. What is the amount that you will reduce from your share capital? Generally, what we will reduce, which we have already booked, correct? Which we have already accounted for in my books of accounts. Accounted for na enna? நான் எதுக்கெல்லாம் டியூ என்ட்ரி போட்டிருக்கேனோ அப்ளிகேஷன் ஃபர்ஸ்ட் டே மணி வந்துடும், அலாட்மெண்ட்டுக்கு டியூ என்ட்ரி போட்டிருப்பேன், அதுக்கப்புறம் ஃபர்ஸ்ட் காலுக்கு டியூ என்ட்ரி போட்டிருப்பேன், செகண்ட் காலுக்கு டியூ என்ட்ரி போட்டிருப்பேன். இல்ல சில கேஸ்ல வந்து இந்த ப்ராப்ளம் they would have told the shares the shareholder named A defaulted to pay the first call and final call and his shares were forfeited அப்படின்னு சொல்லுவாங்க. Okay, or he defaulted the first call and his shares were forfeited after the final call அப்படின்னு சொல்றாங்க வச்சுக்கோ. He defaulted the first call. Okay, கம்பெனி வந்து அந்த ஸ்டேஜ்ல எப்ப வரைக்கும் கால் கொடுத்திருப்பாங்க, அலாட்மெண்ட்டுக்கு டியூ என்ட்ரி பாஸ் பண்ணிருப்போம், ஃபர்ஸ்ட் காலுக்கும் டியூ என்ட்ரி பாஸ் பண்ணிருப்போம். எப்ப நமக்கு தெரியும் அவன் கொடுக்கலன்னு சொல்லிட்டு? அவன் வந்து எப்ப பண்றோமோ, எஸ், எப்போ ஷேர்ஸ் ஃபோர்ஃபீட் பண்றோமோ அப்பதான் நமக்கு தெரியும் அவன் கொடுக்க போறது இல்ல, அதனால ஃபோர்ஃபீட் பண்றோம்னு சொல்லிட்டு. So till which stage when the company has raised the calls or accounted for the due entries, டியூனா எனக்கு வர வேண்டிய அமௌண்ட் அப்படின்னு அக்கவுண்ட் பண்ணிருக்கேன் பத்தியா, அதுக்கு பேர் என்ன? டைப் ஆஃப் த ஷேர் கேபிட்டல்ல வருமே, கால்ட் அப் கேபிட்டல். The capital which is for which the company has raised the calls. இந்தாங்கப்பா எனக்கு பணம் இப்ப வரணும், இதான் டியூ டேட், கம் ஆன் பே த மணி அப்படின்னு சொல்லி ஒரு கால்ஸ் கொடுத்திருப்பாங்கல்ல, அதுக்கு பேர் தான், அந்த அமௌண்ட் பேர் தான் கால்ட் அப் கேபிட்டல். So the liability in the balance sheet of the company under share capital, the amount which is sitting is nothing but the called up capital. Okay, only when everybody pays the amount it becomes fully paid up. Pay பண்ற வரைக்கும் the amount whatever is there is only called up capital. So to the extent of the called up value, I would say out of 10 rupees of the share, 2 rupees is application, 3 rupees is allotment, then 5 plus 3 rupees is first call and 2 rupees is final call. And the shares were forfeited after the first call. Then the first 3 stages, the company would have raised the due, except the 2 rupees. So 8 rupees is the called up capital. So the shares forfeited is 200 shares. So 200 shares multiplied by 8, 1600 will be debited to share capital. In case if the amount includes premium, that also will come. And then 2 calls in arrears. What is this? Calls in arrears, as you know, it is the amount which you have not received. The final call. If the call you forfeit pandriyo, that call, the final call, it is arrears. So 2 calls in arrears, that amount which is not received. And the important entry account is 2 shares forfeited account. Two shares forfeited account. This account தான் நம்ம பார்த்தோம். என்ன பார்த்தோம் நம்ம? Whatever amount the company has collected so far from the defaulter should be credited to the account called shares forfeited account. அந்த account தான் இது. So this amount is nothing but the forfeited shares multiplied by the amount which the company has received so far. Okay, so இந்த மாதிரி போட்டாதான் இந்த entry automatically tally ஆகும். This is the forfeiture entry. Next comes the reissue entry. Reissue is generally like when you issue shares, what you do, you credit the share capital, right? And then when the money comes, application review பண்ணும்போது you debit the bank account. அது ரெண்டும் காமனா இருக்கும். Then what else we have? So bank account debit, which has the reissue price multiplied by the price of the shares issued. Reissued number of shares multiplied by the share price, reissue price. Then shares forfeited account. So this is nothing but the reissued number of shares multiplied by the discounted price. நம்ம என்ன பார்த்தோம்? When a reissue is being done on discount, we should use the balance which is available in the shares forfeited account. So the shares forfeited account will be debited. அப்படின்னு பார்த்தோம் இல்லையா? அந்த debit தான் to share capital account, which is the value of the reissued shares multiplied by the face value. And if the reissue is done on premium, whatever is the premium amount will sit in securities premium account. Okay. So this is the reissue entry. Reissue is pretty much like your normal issue of shares entry. Then the last entry is for transferring the profit on reissue. Generally, what is the thing? இப்போ இங்கேயே வந்து பாத்தீங்கன்னா இங்க ஒரு கிரெடிட் இருக்கு, இங்க ஒரு டெபிட் இருக்கு. So directa this amount x amount minus y amount will give you the profit. Correct? When this will change? When the number of shares of forfeiture is different from the number of shares of reissue. Oh, sorry. The number of shares of reissue is different from the number of shares forfeited. Correct? So there comes your proportionate working. And the working now I already showed when we discussed the previous thing. So the entry is shares forfeited account debit to capital reserve account. Whatever amount which is lying in your shares forfeited account will be transferred to the capital reserve. Capital reserve is always a liability. It's a reserve. It will come under reserves and surplus. Reserves is always relating to the owner, the owner's equity. So owner's equity na, similar to your share capital, at the time of liquidation or the winding up of company, the company has to pay back the owners towards the capital as well as the accumulated profits and reserves. Adhanala reserves and surplus is always coming under liability. So capital reserve has a credit balance. Whatever amount is lying in your shares forfeited account will be transferred to capital reserve account, which is the realized profit. So this is the realized profit. So any doubts in the accounting entries? Before I move into the key pointers. Key pointers is more like, it will give you a brush up.
Ma'am, it's fine, ma'am.
Fine? Okay. It's more like a revision for you, right? So உனக்கு ரொம்ப ரெப்பிட்டேஷனா சில விஷயங்கள் ரொம்ப ரெப்பிட்டேஷனா இருக்கலாம். But I feel that it may give you a different perspective. So it will definitely be useful. Okay. So key pointers. First, shares forfeited account ங்கிறது எப்பவுமே ஞாபகம் வச்சுக்கோங்க. It is the amount received so far from the defaulter. Okay. There are few timelines which we should be very, very careful about. First, when the default actually happened. Next, time when the shares are forfeited, because these two are not the same. Default எப்ப happen ஆகும்னா எந்த ஸ்டேஜ்ல அவன் பேமெண்ட் ஸ்டாப் பண்ணான். Forfeiture வந்து எந்த ஸ்டேஜ்ல கம்பெனி forfeit பண்ணிட்டு. So these two are two different timelines. Third one is till what stage the capital is called up. Only when you know this, you will be able to bring the amount here. Okay. Then in case of pro rata allotment over subscription, in case of pro rata allotment, application stage la vandu you might have received some excess amount from that fellow. Adu vandu or portion of amount which is lying with the company to be adjusted against the further installments. So that amount, whatever is excess, can be adjusted against the default. Whatever on the forfeiture வந்து அவனோட டியூக்கு அகேன்ஸ்டா இந்த அமௌண்ட்டை வந்து நீங்க அட்ஜஸ்ட் பண்ணிக்கலாம். Okay. So excess money paid by the defaulter to be adjusted with the due amount. Okay. So yes, with this the theory